Hey bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me, and today I'm sharing a DIY I've had a ton of requests for. We are making our very own palette of pressed shimmer eyeshadow. This is the palette we're making today. It's also what I'm wearing on my eyes, and you'll get to see this go on a little bit later in the video. This formulation is one that I have taught many times in in-person classes and have had so much fun watching my students create the most amazing rainbows of eyeshadow. It is a slight modification on the eyeshadow formulation that is in my book, Make It Up, The Essential Guide to DIY Makeup and Skincare, and you will need a copy of my book in order to make the formulation I'm sharing in this video. The formulation variation I am sharing today makes one swap to the base formulation to use a more luxurious, high-performance ingredient. I've also changed the making process and the color blending, and those two changes are really intertwined. I wanted to modify this formulation so that it wasn't necessary to use a coffee grinder to blend up every single color. You use the coffee grinder for the base, and then you set the base aside, and then you don't need a coffee grinder anymore. In order to not need a coffee grinder, instead of using pure pigments, we are using micas because they incorporate into our powdery base much easier. I've also worked out the exact additions of 2 ingredients that you need to add to each individual shadow so that you can press them. Many factors guided the formulation decisions that I made for Make It Up that don't necessarily come into play on the blog. A really big one was global ingredient availability and trying to keep the required shopping list reasonably short, which is why the book doesn't use micas. I was trying to sort of not force you to have to buy a bunch of different micas, but mica availability has improved a lot since I was working on the formulations for Make It Up in 2014 and 2015, and oh my gosh, micas are super fun to work with, and I absolutely love what they do for eyeshadows. In addition to keeping the ingredients shopping list fairly short, I was also working to keep the equipment shopping list fairly short, and that is why we have volume measurements for powders, because tiny amounts of powders weigh tiny amounts, and then you need quite a precise scale. So instead, we are using tiny measuring spoons for this. I know that I don't really do volume measurements ever anymore, but I have made this eyeshadow so many times using volume measurements, and I've had so many students make it. I know it works this way, even though it's not what you would do if you were making a great big batch to scale up and sell, but this isn't a scale it up and sell formulation. This is make it at home with some of your friends and have lots of fun kind of project. I don't want the talking head portion of this video to be an eternity long, so please, pretty please, make sure you are reading the partner blog post. It's linked in the description box below, so if you're wondering like, what about making matte eyeshadow? Or like, how did these changes come about? Like, what's the story there? All of that and a whole heck of a lot more is covered in the blog post, plus all the instructions and amounts all written out, links to places to buy the packaging, the pressing tools, all kinds of awesome stuff. So please make sure you are taking a look at that too. But yeah, without further ado, let's smush up some eyeshadow. In this coffee grinder, I already have all of the ingredients for the powder base of the eyeshadow, except for the silica microspheres, which is that 1 ingredient swap we are making. So our first step is just grinding this up. So this coffee grinder I only ever use for DIY projects. This is definitely not like also a spice coffee grinder, because we don't want, perhaps a little bit of a ground chili pepper sneaking its way into our eyeshadow. To start with, I'm going to pop just a bit of cling film over top of the grinder. This is a trick I learned from TKB Trading's website, and so it really helps reduce the volume of the grinder. It reduces the volume of the grinder down to basically the bottom of the lid. So now it stops about here, and so we've only got maybe 2 centimeters of depth instead of 8 or 9 centimeters of depth. And so because it's so much more small, it blends up a lot faster and a lot better. We are going to blend, and then I'm gonna stop, and you'll see me smacking it with a spoon. I'm gonna just speed everything up because it's rather dull to watch, but you'll see me whack. So I'm whacking the powder down, and I'll pull the lid off with the cling film and stir around in the bottom to make sure that we're incorporating all those little drops of oil. And I am going to have my dust mask on, because until that oil gets nice and incorporated, when we pull the lid off, powder is going to poof up. But once the oil is incorporated, we don't have to worry about the dust mask anymore. So on goes my dust mask, and I'm going to start blending. Okie dokie, we are all done here. So you can see that this has a really nice kind of creamy, like wet sand consistency. You can definitely tell that this isn't just dry powder. You can't overblend this mixture, but you can definitely underblend it. So when in doubt, blend some more. Once our base is all blended up, we are going to pop it in a baggie. This is just a small zip top plastic bag. You could also use a jar. So just gonna spoon that in there. If it is a zip top bag, definitely take care to avoid the treads of the zipping mechanism, because if they get filled with powder, it's a lot harder to get a good seal. So that's it for the coffee grinder with this updated version. To clean this, I will just kind of throw like a tablespoon of rice in here, give it a good zzz, and then dump that out, and then I will wipe out the inside of the grinding dish with a paper towel that's got some isopropyl alcohol on it to get it nice and clean. One of the things that I really like about this updated version is that we don't have to clean the coffee grinder between every single color blend. And it's also a lot easier to clean the coffee grinder now because this powder is sheer. And when you have a final eyeshadow, obviously it's no longer transparent powder, it's a colorful eyeshadow. And so cleaning it up out of the grinder is a massive pain in the backside. Our last step for finishing up the base is adding our silica microspheres. So I've already weighed them out here. This is definitely an ingredient you want to be wearing a dust mask for when you're weighing them out. Quickly tap that in there. The amount of silica microspheres is the same as the amount of calcium carbonate in the original formulation. And if you are wondering where that formulation is, it is in my book, and you will need to buy a copy of it to get the formulation, but it is not very expensive. I'll throw a link to a page on my website that has links to places to buy it all over the world. And yeah, that's our eyeshadow base. So make sure you label the baggie so you know what it is. And we are now ready to turn this into some beautiful eyeshadows. This is where things get really fun. We've got our eyeshadow base, and I've pulled out a selection of micas and a few oxides to create some eyeshadows. And then when we have a few of those, we'll choose a couple and then press them so that you can have a nice, beautiful pressed palette. So quick walkthrough of everything that you're going to need. Of course, you're going to need your eyeshadow base. You're going to need micas, and this is important. The micas are the thing that gives the eyeshadow its color and its shimmer. If you'd like to learn more about this, please make sure you're reading that partner blog post, which is always linked in the description box below my videos. You're going to need a set of tiny measuring spoons. I have an FAQ on my website about the different brands that you can buy and how much each little scoop is, because they will have cutesy names that aren't actually, representative of how much they are. They're just cute. With this set, the set is from Fox Run. The dash is 1/8 of a teaspoon. The pinch, the next smallest one, is 1/16. The smidgen is 1/32, and the nip is 1/64. But yeah, these words are not at all universal terms. Got an FAQ on my website, definitely give it a read, but I recommend this set. I really like it because each spoon is half the size of the one before it. So it makes it pretty easy to do your fractions. You're going to need little plastic bags like this to mix and mash everything together. It's very useful to have paper towel for wiping down the spoon in between colors. Make sure you take notes. It is so heartbreaking to make the most perfect color of eyeshadow ever and have no idea what was in it. I recommend using a permanent marker to number the bag after you are done massaging everything together, because if you start with it on there, you'll just rub the marker off onto your hands. And that is it. So let us get mixing. Our first ingredient is our base, and we need 1/4 teaspoon of it, which is 2 dashes. You want to be kind of measuring this a little bit like you would with flour, right? So just kind of lightly leveling it off. We're not packing the spoon. For this first one, I think I'm going to do a blend of Artisan Coral and Glimmer Beige, both from TKB Trading. For this video, all of the micas from TKB Trading are ones that I have purchased, but all of the micas from YellowBee are gifted. So we've got a 1/4 teaspoon of eyeshadow base in here, and we want to add 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of micas. If we were gonna go for the full 1/4 teaspoon, it would be 2 dashes, or it's 4 pinches, which is a 1/16, or it is 8 smidgens, or it is 16 nips. So I'm gonna start with the pinch. We have 4 of these to play with, and I'm just gonna start with half of the total maximum amount. I'm gonna do 1 of each, and we'll massage it together and swatch it and see what we think. And then we just massage this together. Make sure you're getting powder out of the corners there. Obviously make sure the bag is sealed really well. This gets real messy real fast if the bag is not sealed. And then once it's mixed, I just dip a finger in there and give it a wee swatch. So that's pretty pale. I actually really like the color. Since I like the color already, I'm just going to double it up so that we have our full maximum 1/4 teaspoon. If I wanted the color to be more pink, I would have either, gone with more Artisan Coral, so it would have been 75% Artisan Coral and 25% Glimmer Beige, or maybe instead of a second scoop of the Artisan Coral, I would have chosen like a pinker mica, so maybe something like this. So now this is equal parts eyeshadow base and mica. And it is definitely a stronger swatch than the one that had, half the amount of mica. I really quite like that. That is lovely. Pop a 1 on there and then update my notes, and we'll put this aside and make another one. Let's do something brown for this one. And how about a bit of Ember? Let's start there. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did last time. I'm going to start with sort of a 1/4 of the mica allotment of each color. Massage that in, swatch it, see what I think, go from there. As you're working, look for any kind of white bits of powder and make sure you're massaging those into eyeshadowy oblivion. Pretty faint, so I would like to amp up the pigment level. I think I'm gonna add a little bit of gold this time. So let's get our notes updated. So to wrap up the mica blend, I'm going to do 1/16 Cinnamon Sugar, 1/16 Ember. Definitely more pigmented, but I want even a little bit more. So I'm going to introduce just a touch of brown iron oxide. So I'm using the 1/64 teaspoon, and I'm going for roughly half of it. So that's, like 1/128th of a teaspoon. Not much at all. The iron oxides definitely take extra work to incorporate, and they pack a serious color punch in comparison to the micas. So definitely start very slow here, and I wouldn't recommend adding much more than a 1/64th of a teaspoon. I mean, definitely feel free to experiment and see what you think, but these are really, really strong, and this is a pretty small batch of eyeshadow. So between the micas and the oxides, you can get a pretty good amount of color happening. Just slightly more opaque, but I'm going to add that other 1/128th of a teaspoon, roughly. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not sure how well it's coming across on camera, but this does definitely seem more opaque to me on first swipe versus the earlier ones. I'm gonna go kind of pink and gold with this one. If you watched my cream eyeshadow video, you know that's a combo I love, except instead of just kind of straight gold, I'm going to use this highlight gold. We'll start with 1/16 of each, see where that gets us. That is really sheer, but it's a gorgeous kind of peachy hue. I'm going to just do another eighth of the foliage to pull it more towards the pink side of things and see how that goes. Okay, there we go. So now we're getting more of a pink. Still pretty sheer, but that is totally okay for this kind of, thinking this would be a great like all over the lid color, and then you'd go into something a little bit deeper for your crease, or if you wanted to, you know, further amp up the color of this, you could look at swapping out some of the foliage for a deeper, darker kind of pink mica. You could look at incorporating a bit of like a pigment if you wanted to. You can definitely have some fun with it. For this last one, I want to do like a really dark brown by blending Ember and this really charcoaly Moonkissed Nights from YellowBee. I'm going to start on the same place we've started with all the other ones, with equal parts of each. Okay, so I think I like where that's going. It's not as strong as I'd like, but I think it's a good blend between the warmer brown and the cooler Moonkissed Nights. One more of each. Definitely stronger, but I want some more color in there, so I'm gonna grab that black iron oxide and go straight in for a full 1/64th based on our previous experiments, our previous batches. Sorry. Well, there we go. You can definitely see that it is darker than the previous one, so woohoo! Let's talk a bit about packaging and the materials that you'll need to press an eyeshadow. If you're happy to leave your eyeshadow loose, you can just use a jar with a sifter top lid. So this jar is a 10-gram jar, and this little wee one is a 5-gram, I believe. It might be a 3-gram. I've had this for a very long time and don't really remember, but they'll come with these little inserts that you can just wedge into the top of the jar, and after you've filled it, and then you can pull back the little tab. This is disposable, and you'll have a few little holes that the product will come out of. You can also buy sifter jars that have a closing top like this one. If you would like to press your eyeshadow and you're new to pressing eyeshadow, a sort of set like this is definitely the easiest way to get into it. So this is from TKB Trading. This is a 12 cavity one, and they also have a 4 cavity one. They have these in a ton of different colors. And then in Canada, Windy Point sells a couple of the 4 color ones. What's lovely about these is it comes with all the pans, it comes with a little pressing tool here, and then it comes with sort of the housing for the pans once they've been filled. So this is a magnetic palette, and once you fill these, they just shlook very nicely in there. And then if you need to press them out, you can just use like a toothpick or anything that's kind of pointy to pop it back out. You can also order these tins just on their own, and you can also get them in different sizes. So this one here is a 36 millimeter round, and then this little dude is a 27 by 13 millimeter one. These are both purchased from TKB Trading, and then I got the little pressing tools for these as well. For a bit of a close-up, kind of see that it it fits in there, and that's for, of course, smushing the eyeshadow in there. You don't have to have the perfect size for every pan that you've got, but it's definitely useful, and they're not very expensive. And here are some other options. So these are both from YellowBee. So this palette is actually not magnetic, but I do quite like it. It's got a really nice kind of satisfying thunk to it. So this is the one that we're going to fill today. And then you can also buy little single pan eyeshadow containers. This looks a lot like the ones that MAC sells their eyeshadows in, so that's neat. And then the tool that I'm going to be using today is this beautiful thing from YellowBee. This was a gift, so you certainly don't need anything this fancy. One of these little tiles will absolutely do the trick, but obviously this is, it's a little bit easier to handle since it has a handle. Let's press some eyeshadows. So out of the ones that we just made, I'm going to do 1, 2, 4, and 5 in kind of a light to dark order. And I'm going to use this little non-magnetic palette from YellowBee, which was gifted, and use their really pretty pressing tool. We do need to modify the eyeshadows a little bit so that they are a pressing consistency. In order to do that, we're going to add a little bit more of two ingredients that are already in the eyeshadow. So we're going to need some additional magnesium stearate. So we're going to need 1/8 of a teaspoon added to each of these, which is a dash in this set. Our next addition is 8 drops of jojoba oil to each little baggie. What you're going to want to do is do it 4 drops at a time. So 4 drops, and you're going to want to prop the bag open. Try to avoid getting the oil on the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seal, massage that in, and then do the other 4 drops. And this isn't, you don't have to do it this way, but I find that it is so much easier to really get the oil worked in. I think we're ready to make an eyeshadow palette. Let's get pressing. So I've got our first shadow here. I like to use a spoon with a pointed tip for this. I just kind of find it works well for spooning the powder into the tin. Once you've got a reasonable amount in there, it's kind of full, you give that a bit of a tap down. I'm not going full pressure just yet. Just trying to create a bit more room at this point in time. All right, now I need to start applying more pressure so that we can get the rest of the powder in there. Oh, I love that magic that happens when you've done your pressing. I'm applying quite a lot of pressure here, giving it just a little wee wiggle. This is the first time I've used this pressing tool from YellowBee, and I really like it. It was gifted, it's got really lovely heft to it. It is so much easier to use than little pressing tiles. I am a fan. So I'm just going around the edges of the little pan here to make sure everything is all pressed in as much as possible. And I'll wipe off the tool with a bit of paper towel, and we're ready to do the next one. Out of all of these eyeshadows that we're pressing here, this last one is the one that had the most oxide in it. And you can see it's also the one I'm having the most issues getting to press nicely. So just something to be aware of if you are experimenting with incorporating more oxides. It can get a little tricksy in this department. And now for some arm swatches. So our first kind of pinky champagne color. I really like this, just a hint of blush. It's not really strong, but that's kind of exactly what I wanted for that one. This one's more of a kind of like pure champagne. Still slightly pinkish, but not as pink as this one. And we've got our kind of medium brown. I'd probably use this as a crease color. And then our darker brown for kind of, I would use this probably as a liner. Oh, I love the gold flecks in this. Oh, that's gorgeous. Kind of getting up close and personal, blushy pink, champagne, and mid brown, and dark kind of charcoal-y, quite charcoal-y, slightly brown, but mostly charcoal. Oh, I really, really like that. So I know these colors are pretty tame since that's what I tend to like in an eyeshadow palette. So I whipped up some more vibrant ones off camera so that I can sort of show you the scope for pretty colors. If you would like to grab the mica blends for these, I've included those on my Patreon as an exclusive. I've chosen a variety of different micas, and all of these are just mica. I haven't added any pigment to these. So you can see the, the variety of pigmentation levels that we can get from different micas. And you can also see the different shimmers that we can get from different micas. This one here at the end is a much larger particle, really high sparkle mica, whereas the one next to it, also a mica, but not nearly shimmery as even the one next to it. So different micas can give, very different levels of shimmer and sparkle, as well as different levels of pigmentation. So make sure you are playing around with different micas and having lots of fun. Let's get some of this eyeshadow on my eyes. So I've already applied a bit of primer. I'm using this Wet n Wild Photo Focus eyeshadow primer. It's about $6 and I really like it. I've used the Urban Decay one, and this one is just as good, if not better, for way less money. We have our gorgeous new palette here. I'm going to do the pinky one all over the lid to start with. Now, I am absolutely not an eyeshadow expert, and what I do know, I owe to Robert Welsh and Wayne Goss and Lisa Eldridge, who have taught me a lot. So if you need eyeshadow application advice, definitely go to them and not me. The lip gloss I'm wearing is one of the ones from my DIY lip gloss from earlier this summer, the one with the clear base. So this one is colored with TKB Trading's Sideshow Pink. I need a mirror that's closer to my face. That's better. And as a side note, if you're looking for a magnetic palette, I love these ones from Salt, New York. This is the small one, and then the big one is roughly twice as big. This is my Second Skin cream foundation that I put in here, and then these are cream tints from Salt. Not sponsored, just a lovely small brand owned by a fellow YouTuber. Oh gosh, I love this color even more now that it is on my eyes. Oh. This is a MAC 217S. Good brush. I like it. This one here, I'm gonna use this one next. This is the Sigma Pencil E30, and I'm going to pick up some of this here, kind of our medium brown. Tapping off my excess. Thank you, Lisa Eldridge, for that bit of learning. And then I think this application style I learned from Wayne Goss, where you kind of do like a little V. And then I'm gonna use the previous brush to blend that out, and then just building it up. And I'm going to use this same brush and go into the darkest one and kind of do more or less the same thing and just put it in a smaller space. Since I'm not very skilled with eyeshadow, I always make sure to just apply like the smallest amounts possible and then really blend out before going back in for more. Applying a little bit under the waterline here. I don't know how well you guys can tell, but this stuff is blending out so beautifully and so easily, which is just lovely, lovely, lovely for application. So here we are, all mascara and eyelinered up. And nice and kind of unnervingly close. formulation is so flexible and you can have so much fun with it. I have taught lots of people how to make eyeshadow using this method, and we've done workshops, and so I'm going to put pictures from some of the creations that some of my students have made in the partner blog post, and then these are some swatches of some other colors that I have made with this formulation, with sparklier micas and with brighter colors. When you're making this eyeshadow, the most important thing is to have lots of fun. I've worked this out so you can do lots of quick iterations and make tons of different eyeshadows. So just go nuts, have fun, blend up colors, add in more pigments if you want, try like sparklier micas if you really like sparkly things. Just, yeah, make messes, make eyeshadow, and have fun. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and please do pick up a copy of my book, Make It Up, The Essential Guide to DIY Makeup and Skincare. There are links to places to buy it all over the world in the description box below. In addition to eyeshadow, there's tons of formulations in here that I'm really proud of. I love the matte lip paint. The Long Wearing Cream lipstick is really gorgeous. The foundation is fantastic and has had lots of really good feedback from people. Please buy my book. Please make lots of eyeshadow and share pictures with me. You can post them on the Humblebee and Me Facebook page or tag me at Marie Rama on Instagram. I would love to see your creations. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.